Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Habibis, three game developers drinking good Arab tea. I'm your host for today, Osama Dorias.
I'm Fawzi Masmar.
And I'm Ram Ismail.
How y'all doing, gentlemen? I have exciting things to talk about.
Sabah khair. I just woke up. It's nice to wake up with like this much energy. I'm all for it.
Good. That means you slept enough hours.
I slept many hours, many hours. I got my vaccine last week. By the time this airs, even longer, I guess. But it was an adventure. I had a week. The whole vaccination thing turned into a major mess because the location I went to where my appointment was didn't have the vaccine that I needed to get.
No.
Yeah, I got the Moderna one, and it was they were just out, and they were like, "Well, sorry, you have to go somewhere else." I had to drive somewhere else, and I am terrified of needles. Like,
oh no,
terrified of needles, to the point where when people panic, you have like a fight or flight response.
Yeah.
I have the fight response, which is not good because I'm like 2 meters tall and I just lose it.
Oh,
so, for me, it's like anxious, right? It's scary to go get an injection or a needle or a vaccine or anything. And in my life, there's like stories of like 4 big guys having to hold me down to like get a jab. So I had built up all of my courage and all of my like restraint to go and just get the thing because it's important, and I want to make sure that my dad is safe and my mom is safe.
Of course.
So I went and I get there and they're just like, "Yeah, we don't have it." And I'm like, "Oh my God." Like I built up all week for this, and I'm like, "Can I still get it today?" So I don't have to be anxious for more days. They send me halfway across the country with like a timeline. They're like, "Okay, well, if you can be here in like 45 minutes."
Well, it's a small country, to be fair.
It's a small country. But if you come halfway across the country in like 45 minutes, we'll get you a job somewhere else. And I just went like, okay. And it turns out that all that stress, really helpful. Because you don't have time to be like scared anymore or like worried about the thing. You're just worried about getting your car like down the right exit.
Yeah.
So got the job, got a sticker with a smiley face. That was nice. And then, for my side effects were really mild, honestly. But I did notice that I sleep longer, and that was very much the case today. So good morning.
I was super fortunate when I'm not afraid of needles, so it's a different situation. But I meant the side effects. I was super fortunate. I had a little bit of a sore arm both times, and nothing else, no other symptoms.
What is your one fear, Osama?
That's a very good question. Okay, so I'm not a very strong swimmer. I can swim, but I'm not a very strong swimmer. So actually, my one fear is seeing someone drown and not be able to help them.
Wow. Because it's very Osama to have the fear not be focused on you.
But I mean, the situation has almost happened before where I was on a boat where someone fell in and I didn't know if they could swim or not. And I know that if I try to help them, I will drown because I'm not a strong swimmer. Wow. And they were thankfully able to swim. But like that moment, it was the most terrified I was in my life. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to watch someone die or I'm going to die with them. There's no other.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah. That's terrifying.
Here I am with my needles. I will get medically approved science stuck into my body to be healthy. I'm terrified. And you're like, I will either watch someone die or like die with them. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's some serious stuff.
Yeah. Hardcore.
Mine is heights.
Yeah.
Oh, you're afraid of heights?
But it's like it's very specific. So like if I'm in a building or in a plane or anything like that, totally fine. But if I'm in a ski lift,
right,
I get the vertigo. Like if I feel that I am in even if I'm at I've been on like skyscrapers and whatnot inside or like on a balcony, but the balcony had like a fence that is more than waist high, totally fine. If it's below waist high, I get the vertigo.
Right.
It's kind of like whenever I feel like there's a good possibility of me falling down is when I really feel it.
I have like a weird one with heights where, when it's like heights, it's weird. If it's like high enough that I will absolutely die on impact, I'm fine. Yeah. If it's like the height where it's like, if I fall, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't like that.
Yeah.
I'm not scared of it, but it's definitely more uncomfortable than just being like 1,000 feet up, where you're like, well, what's the worst that could happen? But yeah, so that was a whole story. I ended up getting like a really big pancake afterwards to celebrate that I did it,
Nice.
which was nice.
That's
So,
great.
yeah, it was great. It was great. But yeah, no, that it's this little pancake house, also halfway across the country. So I went, and it's a place that we always used to go to back in the days when we had celebrations or for Eid or something. We might end up at that pancake place after the early years where Eid was just McDonald's, which that was a celebration. Like we never got to have McDonald's. So. But when we had a little bit more taste, we switched to like really good Dutch pancakes, which are really good. So
I love Dutch pancakes. My friend Paul, who lives in Montreal, is half Dutch. You've met him, Remy, one time. We went to have
right,
together.
yes.
And one time I went over to his house and he's like, I'm going to make you Dutch pancakes. And I wasn't sure if that meant I had to pay for half the ingredients. I didn't know what it meant exactly. So I'm like, all right, show me what you got. We'll go Dutch on the pancakes. All right, sure, let's do it. But they were delicious. And you could actually top them with a whole bunch of different things. So he kept like making one after the other. So that was great.
The one I always get at that place is called Apfelstrudel. Which is obviously a little bit based on like the Austrian/German version, yeah. And it's a Dutch pancake sits sort of between a crepe and an American pancake. It's a little thicker than a crepe, and a little more spongy than a crepe, but it's not as spongy as an American one, and it's big, right? A Dutch pancake is relatively big. It's plate sized, and in the Netherlands it'll come out on like a big plate. So they can be pretty massive, and the Apfelstrudel one was apple, cinnamon, raisin, almonds, and sugar, powdered sugar.
Actually sounds delicious.
And it's very good. And after it, you're just out for the day. It has that like food quality where you eat it, and then afterward you sweat what you ate.
Oh yeah.
It's the only equivalent of that in the Netherlands, I think. It was really good. I was really happy. So I drove home like very satisfied and happy, and then just fell asleep. So it's been an interesting week.
That's good, man. Osama, wait a minute. Osama, as we started the episode, you were like very excited and you had good news or something.
Well, it was actually exciting for me. What happened is randomly we're having conversations on Twitter with some devs from Montreal, and one of them said, "Hey, I miss all y'all. How about we just go to a park and chill?" So I'm like, "Yeah, sure." Thinking that it was mostly going to be people from that thread, I said, "Who wants to go to the park this Saturday?" And about 100 people replied.
Oh wow!
Yes, and we can't do that. We have provincial restrictions that limit it to 50. So me and two friends, we actually set up a form and we had people sign up, and we went to we only picked the first 50, and we went to a park. And the day that we set this up, the weather was going to be extremely hot, like 35 degrees Celsius plus rain. Plus rain, both like the worst case scenario. We're going to be uncomfortable and wet. But we're like, you know what? We'll move it and cancel it and keep moving it until the weather fits. But when the day came, it was sunny and cool and like perfect weather. Perfect weather. It cooled down enough and everybody showed up, and we had an incredible time. And this is the biggest gathering I've had since the beginning of COVID. It went from, I think the second biggest was a family thing where 10 or 12 people showed up. When those restrictions were lifted and that was allowed. And now we went to 50. Everybody, 100% of the people were double vaccinated. We still social distance. We kept things safe. Everybody brought snacks that were individually wrapped and packaged. So we did all the precautions, followed all the rules. The police still showed up and counted our heads to make sure we were at 50. Yeah, they showed up on bikes, and they were like, they were making sure of two things. This is a thing I didn't even realize at that point. They were making sure that we were not a protest, and they were counting our heads, because protests are limited to 20 people and gatherings are limited to 50. So they actually came, counted our heads, and asked us if we were a protest. We're like, do you see any signs? Do you hear any chanting? Like, it was such a silly question for them to even make. But apparently, yeah, there are a lot of people who are like skirting that and protesting different things, and that was not us. We had a great time. To be fair, I knew most of the people who were there. There were like 2 or 3 people who were new to Montreal. All 3 of them came right before COVID hit, so it was really sad
Wow.
situation. And they were meeting like people in Montreal for the first time, and it was such a good thing. We're going to try to do it again in a couple of weeks.
To be fair,
You're
if
gonna
it's a group of game developers getting together, there was probably protesting happening.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. We were talking about like industry, our industry experience and stuff like that. It was pretty much a protest, right?
Yeah.
Are you protesting anything? How ridiculous this question is, sir.
But man, that sounds cool. I haven't done anything like that for such a long time now. We're
Yeah.
approaching a year and a half, almost 2 years. I miss
Right.
being around game devs and just chatting about stuff like that in real
For
life.
sure.
Me
For
too.
sure. Yeah, Montreal is a good city for that because there's just a lot of game devs on every level of the industry,
Yeah.
right? From students to like big AAA. So,
There's about 12,000 people who work in the game
Right.
industry in Montreal.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's 10,000 here in Sweden.
Yeah, it's big.
It's kind of crazy considering, like, there's only 10 million
right.
and
Yeah.
people living in Sweden. Like per capita is probably the most game dev per million people in the world. I'd
Might-
say.
Possibly.
Might be. I mean, Montreal, you have to remember that Canada is also like 30 million
Oh,
people.
okay. Oh, yeah, that's
like
right.
Canada has barely any people. It is always staggering to me, but like Canada is less than double the Netherlands in
Yeah.
terms of people.
Hmm.
And I think the Netherlands fits in like if you would map the Netherlands to Canada, I don't think you'd see much of the Netherlands.
No, you wouldn't. We're literally the second biggest country in the world after Russia.
Right.
It's massive.
And
Um,
also you're 30 million people.
Yeah, and that 12,000 is only Montreal. It's only one city. If you
That's
look at the
only
rest
Montreal.
of
Wow.
yeah. Quebec adds another like almost 1,000 because Quebec City has a lot of studios, and now they have others in Sherbrooke and Chicoutimi and different places. So you could add maybe bring it up to close to 15,000, and then Ontario has about 2,000, and British Columbia has about 4,000. So altogether, we're close to 20,000.
Wow, yeah, that's a lot of game devs.
Right.
Yeah, but still, per capita, Sweden's still probably more because it's 10,000 out of 10 million. Here, it's like 20,000 out of 30 million, but still pretty big. Per capita in a city, I think Montreal is the biggest in the world.
You have to remember that a lot of those spaces still have like pretty large indie scenes.
Yes.
In Canada, I know Sweden has indie, obviously a bit spread out between Stockholm and Malmö and Gothenburg.
Yeah.
I think.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of probably uncounted development in Sweden and Canada both.
Yeah.
I know, obviously, in Alberta there's a lot of indie.
Yep. And a couple
A
of
lot
AAA.
of and a couple of AAA.
Yeah.
And great government planning being done there with regards to supporting the games industry. With a little tone of sarcasm there. But it's interesting seeing these places. I mean, I'm in the Netherlands. We're like 17 million people, and we have one AAA, and we have a bunch of like mid-sized studios, but that's kind of it in terms of bigger companies. Lots of business to business in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Lots of edutainment and games, applied games, games for research, that kind of stuff. But entertainment is really a growing niche.
Yeah, I just fact checked it to make sure. The Swedish game companies are employing a total of 9,178 people.
Wow, that's big.
Wow.
It's kind of insane number of people working in the games industry for a country this small.
Yeah.
Right.
In Montreal, Ubisoft alone is over 4,000 people. I think last count it was 4,500. It's literally the biggest video game studio in the world. It surpassed.
Flambeer was 2 people.
Yeah, that counts.
also a big deal back in the days.
It's still a big deal in my heart, Rami.
Aww.
So
what have you all been playing? Have you been playing? Or is it another? Because I finally played a game again.
Oh, okay.
Finally, for the first time. Well, if you want to go first, I didn't want to rush in and go like Let's go.
I don't mind. I don't have a game, and I'm not sure if Fauzi has a game because he's been extremely busy. So maybe if we start with games, you can start, and then we'll take it over.
Just get the we're a games podcast checkbox.
Because I sampled a lot of games, but not enough to be able to talk about
samples.
Yeah, I played like 5 or 10 new games that hit Gamebox all at the same time, just to like see which one I'm gonna play.
Game Pass.
Yeah, Game Pass is amazing, man.
Sorry, I think you said Game Box. I was like, okay.
Did I say Game Box? I meant Game Pass. Sorry.
I mean, I'm going to hear it in the edit. If you said Game Box, that's the name of the episode. You understand
right? Oh, no.
Oh, no, wait. Last episode was Android Box. That's too many boxes.
Too many boxes.
I have to think about this.
I think I merged Xbox with Game Pass.
At this point, they're the same thing. You're not. You're really not wrong. No, I played a video game. It was interesting. It's this thing that I haven't done for a while. I played Axiom Verge 2, which came out.
That was in the new Nintendo Indie Direct thing the other day,
right?
wasn't
It was. And Axiom Verge is a very interesting, very strange kind of game. It's one of those games that's really, I hate the term auteur game, but it kind of is. Mm-hmm. It's made by a guy named Tom Happ. And when I say it's made by a guy named Tom Happ, I mean it's made by a guy.
It's just him.
Named Tom Happ, and he gets a little bit of help with like small things, but the art, the code, all of that is him. And the game sort of plays around these like weird alternate reality situations that happen. And the first one felt very Metroidvania, right? Mm-hmm. But it looked very Metroidvania. This one, it is very rich in terms of culture and place and locations. And I will say, like, the first one wasn't bad at that. It was very imaginative, but this one goes like all out, and it's very well done. Mm-hmm. It's very chill. And the thing that struck me is I played it early on, and the soundtrack is incredible. And then at some point, I was playing the game, and I was like, wow, this sounds familiar. And I suddenly went, and I'm like, this is Arabic music. Mm-hmm. I think this is Arabic. And like, the rhythms kind of hit like a sort of like an Arabic like rhythm, like a Middle Eastern percussion kind of thing. And it's made by Tom. So I'm like, that seems, maybe just accidentally. And then this vocalist comes in, and her pronunciation is 100% Arabic, and I'm like, this is starting to feel intentional. So the game actually uses intentionally a lot of Arabic thematics in its OST, in its soundtrack, which was really weird because it's meant to feel sort of otherworldly, and even to me it does because it's a different interpretation. But it was also very homely to me. Like, obviously, I can't tell how much of that is intentional or not. But if you want a really good game that also like touches a little bit on like Arab music, I can really, really recommend Axiom Verge.
I've never played fun. The first one. Like, what is the standout feature, if there is one that makes? I'm curious. Yeah,
I think what would happen if Metroid didn't exist, but you made a Metroidvania. Because it's like, how Metroid sort of has like its list of abilities, and it's like roll into a ball, like lower bomb, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The game has some metaphors for those, right? There's a shockwave you can do that will drop stones that are attached to the ceiling or something.
Okay.
But it's never sort of like a 1-to-1 map to Metroid.
Okay.
So it's sort of like imaginative Metroid. Very similar in structure, like go from place A to place B, explore places, figure out how to get there, get new, it's called arms in this game, but get new abilities to progress through the game, and then deal with whatever narrative situation comes your way. It's very much about
interesting. Okay.
I think a little bit similar to the first Axiom Verge. It's a lot about technology and science and history and faith and a lot of those things. So it's big stories, very rich, very cultured world, and just fun fun gameplay. It gets it does the Metroid thing where every now and then you get stuck and you just don't know how to solve it, and those parts are frustrating. But most of the time, you're just having a good time running through these worlds and going like, "Wow, this is pretty. Oh, that sounds nice. Oh, cool, new ability." And it keeps you rolling. So I've been playing it pretty much nonstop on the Switch since it came out, and that was 3 days ago when we're recording this.
I googled it now, and like some of the screenshots, they seem to have statues from Babylon. Like the statues of like body of the lion, wings, and like a long bearded person.
Yep.
So it has like a Mesopotamian influences on like that.
For sure. There's a lot of reference to sort of like the Kazakh region. So there's a lot going on. Fun stuff. Really interesting. Optional boss fights. Wow. That was a cool like little touch. Cool. Like there's these giant bosses, super impressive, huge screen filling. Giant snakes moving around, like flying Babylonian statues with missile launchers on the back. But you can just walk past them if you want. You don't have to. I mean, I couldn't, obviously. Like I'm just like, no, this is not. We're not doing that. We're gonna fight. But you could, if you don't feel like doing the boss fight, you could just walk past, and you have this ability to hack technology. So one of the bosses, I found a way to disable every weapon on it through hacking. And then just like walk up and punch it a bunch of times.
That's really clever. So the big question: skip Axiom Verge 1 to 2, or play them in order?
You can't skip one. They're both very big games. Like and you can play them for a very, very long time. And I think the thing about 2 is that it's standalone. You don't really need to play 1. It explains everything pretty well. I think the thing with Action Verge 2 is it feels very chill. It just feels chill. It's a chill Metroidvania. I don't know how they made a chill Metroidvania, but it's a very chill Metroidvania. You don't ever feel like super punished. You don't ever feel like, you're losing massive progress. You're always sort of like chipping away at the thing, at whatever's happening. And yeah, I don't know. I've never played a chill Metroidvania before, I think.
That's exciting. Actually, I'm looking forward
I'll be looking forward to trying it out, actually. I
So
haven't played the
Switch,
Metroidvania in a while.
Me either. Well, except for Hollow Knight. I replayed it again recently, but otherwise I haven't played one in a while either.
That was one of the 7 games you were playing at that time, I guess.
Yeah, I actually almost finished Hollow Knight. I got really far in it. It was really, really good. But it's hard. It gets much harder.
So I think that's it for me. I mean, I watched What If, the first one.
I did too.
I haven't yet. I just found out that it's out. I had no idea.
It's out. It came out on Wednesday, last Wednesday. So by the time this airs, the second episode is out, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
But it's all I can say. It's very pretty.
Yes.
It's fun. It's not. It's hard to, because normally with Marvel stuff, you have sort of like an opinion whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fun. It's just fun.
Yeah.
I watched it. I was like, oh, cool.
It's exactly what I was hoping for. So for me, it's perfect, because I used to read the What If comics back in the day, and they really kept. Well, I loved them back. I was really, really young when they were a thing. But this is exactly what it is. It's like a thing changed, and that one small thing changed caused a ripple effect that will change the story in these ways. And it becomes interesting because you start to learn about the characters, what they would do in this alternate situation, right? And this, like, that's the part that I was worried about. Like, I don't want to, what if a scenario that's implausible. Those are not as interesting as what if scenarios that, what if we chose to write it in this direction? That's a lot more interesting to me. I don't want, what if Wolverine was someone completely different? I want, what if this happened to Wolverine instead? would he still be the same person he is? You know,
Right.
the character
What if
portrayals.
instead of like nails out of his hand, he got like nails out of his toes?
Well, maybe not that, because anyway. But yeah,
I'm a bit
I would
less
ju-
excited about watching the show now.
thank you, Rami. You ruined everything.
I would very much want to see what happened. That makes this fighting style would be so different.
but like,
How does he open a door cool then? Like, what do you do? Do you do like a flip? What do you do?
Maybe like Chun Li, like doing leg fans the entire time.
I'm just wondering, like, how would you design that?
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Go back to your story, Osam.
No, but that's really mostly what I wanted to say about What If. Is I think they nailed the tone of the comics, and they don't necessarily have to if they have something new. But I was hoping that they would, because that's what I loved about them. So this first episode, it was really what I was hoping for, and I'm really excited for the series. The thing is, it almost exists outside of the MCU, because it doesn't add to the lore as other. It's an exploration of characters. It's not going to push the plot or the story or the needle in any way.
You think they're going to be able to resist moving the plot or the story?
Well, I mean, with Loki and what Loki did, it's a possibility that all of what we're seeing right now will be considered canon, and that it's going to be all collapsed into one thing, and we're going to see the changes that happen in What If in the main timeline. But that's going to be unprecedented, because What If in the past didn't do that ever in the comics. Even though there was a multiverse in the comics, they never did that. So that would be completely new. What If was really just an exploration of. They had other comics, like I mentioned, the Exiles, where the dimension hopped and they saw situations very similar to What If, but all that was canon. Here, that was never the case traditionally. So I would be surprised if they went that route. But they can make it work, and I'd be excited to see it. Mm-hmm. Also, in addition to watching What If, I saw The Suicide Squad, not to be mistaken with Suicide Squad, which was a movie that came out in 2016. The Suicide Squad just came out this year. And when I announced that I saw The Suicide Squad, I was surprised by the number of people who said, wait, is that the old movie from 5 years ago? That it went completely under their radar because of the confusing name, where only "the" was added at the beginning.
I'm normally pretty aware of what's happening in Medialand, and I had no idea that there was a new Suicide Squad movie. I mean, the last one I watched was Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed that, but like...
Wait, it's Idris Elba, it's not Will Smith.
No, it's Idris Elba, yeah, absolutely.
But is this like a Spider-Man thing, when there's like they pretend that the previous movies never existed, and then they're just starting from the beginning again?
Yes, it's in a weird way. So basically, what they did is they didn't acknowledge the first movie in any direct way. But Harley, the character Harley Quinn, is clearly the same Harley Quinn as from the first movie, and it's almost like they didn't. It wasn't a reboot of the first movie either, because they didn't go into the origin of what the Suicide Squad is and how they formed it. They just kind of went, okay, and this thing is a thing, and now we have these characters, and they're going to be the Suicide Squad. So you jump into the action extremely quickly compared to the first one. Like, there's no setup or anything, and I think that helped. I think most people who watch this one are, like, especially in this situation, are diehard fans of either DC or Suicide Squad. Most other people just assumed it was the same movie. So I think it worked in this situation. But it's like, I don't know if you've both seen the first Suicide Squad movie.
I have. I wish I haven't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we undo that?
I feel exactly the same way. I can't even remember the first movie. I saw it and like I remember the last fight scene had like green explosions. I barely remember anything else, just little clips. It was an uninteresting, not good movie that was clearly designed by a committee. Yeah.
I think my favorite thing about that movie is I very strongly remember that one of the characters died, and I just went like,
yeah. Well, you're gonna do this a couple of times in this movie too, to be fair.
Right, but it's not for your main character. Hopefully, like you have like your squad of people, and you're supposed to like empathize with them and like feel for them, and then one of them does like the heroic sacrifice, and you're like,
yeah.
It's a pretty common DC like problem in the movies. It's the same thing with Superman's dad in the original, like in the new original Superman, with the whole tornado situation. And Superman's dad is like, "No, you can't show your powers," and the dad just stands there smiling while getting like absorbed by a tornado. And I'm like, "You're Superman, like just
Yeah.
Move out of the way of this group of people real fast.
Yes.
Grab your dad, put him 6,000 feet away,
Yes.
and just run back. I don't see the problem. What is happening? And the dad's just like, yeah, this is good stuff. I nailed it.
I'm proud of you for letting me
There's
die.
there's no way this is gonna hurt my child in the long, like, just
It's not
no way he'll get
traumatizing
like
at all.
issues. No way there's gonna be issues stemming from this incident. Nailing it. I was laughing in cinema. I felt really bad, but I was
Well,
like, oh my god.
Here, you're going to laugh intentionally. There's going to be a
Okay.
lot of genuinely funny moments. One character in particular stole the show. King Shark is one of my favorite characters. I loved him before. I adore him now. He is voiced, and this shocked me. I didn't know this going in, by Sylvester Stallone.
Ooh.
And
Oh
it's
my god.
as incredible as you would imagine that to be. He is such an endearing character and a bloodthirsty murderer at the same time. It's so shocking, and you get whiplash back and forth in the movie because of it. So he stole the show. Other characters were really good. Harley was as good as always. If you like Bird of Prey, you'll like this. I think it suffered from the same thing as Bird of Prey, where the villain wasn't that great, and because of that, it won't be a masterpiece, because like it's villains that make these movies, right? It's really mostly the villain. Are they compelling?
I think it's a little complicated because your characters are villains too.
Yes, and I think that's why it's confusing, and it kind of blurs the line. They're anti-heroes in this case. Traditionally they're villains, but in this setup, they're anti-heroes, like Deadpool is in a certain way. But still, you need that villain that's even more villainous, and we didn't really get that in either of those two movies. Otherwise, they were great movies. They had good characterization, funny, visually appealing. They were funny. I still recommend it. It's one of my favorite DCU movies, if it counts as DCU. Who even knows anymore what's DCU and what's not? It's just everything's random. But DC movie, let's say. In addition to that, I actually sampled a whole bunch of games that I want to talk about very briefly. Because I didn't play any of them for long.
You're Rami today.
Yes, today I am Rami Ismail. Nice to meet y'all.
I'm with Salvadorius.
So I played Chris Tales, which is like kind of an RPG. To be honest, I fell off of it a little bit hard because I didn't really like the story. It felt a little bit juvenile. Like it felt like a game I would have liked if I was playing it as a kid. Art style was good. Combat was interesting, but the story didn't keep me. It's like an action. It's a turn-based RPG, like a traditional RPG, and the art style was interesting and new.
Right.
One thing that I didn't like was there were like 3 characters called Chris. Like I have already a hard time remembering character names in anything, any kind of media. That just
I call nonsense on that statement. If I like name any comic character from the last 75 years, you go like, yes, this person was in this comic in this year, and they've been in that and that.
I can remember code names pretty easily, but like normal names, like regular run of the mill names, like Chris, like I couldn't remember. I couldn't keep the characters straight.
I mean, you've got Chris, and then you've got the other Chris's, and then you've got
like Christian and Chris Dale or something like that. Another
Chris Bell.
Yeah,
Chris,
I could not remember. I couldn't keep them straight.
Time travel makes things a little complicated.
There was also a game called Last Stop that I played briefly.
I played a bit of that myself as well.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what you think of it. Because
go for it, Hassan. What did you reckon?
It felt like just the setup is a little bit like a Telltale game. It's like narrative driven, and you make some choices and a little bit of action scenes in between. I actually liked the story. It was intriguing. I was curious to see what happens next. There was a lot of what's the word? Uncanny Valley. Like the animations were very stiff compared to the voice acting. Again, like Telltale, but I was hoping for a little bit more fluidity. So I was always aware that I was playing a game, which was kind of sad in something like with such good voice acting. The story was intriguing. I will continue playing this game at some point. I don't know what you thought, Fauzi.
Yeah, I played maybe an hour or so of it. The very similar impression. It seems like it's a game that's going down the Telltale kind of narrative treatment.
Yeah,
there were some the the gameplay, there were some gameplay parts that didn't really make sense to me within the game world. Like you were
Yes.
hanging out with people, but then you have to throw stuff at stuff.
Yes. I hated that
Like at the very
sequence.
early section of the game, and like you have to throw at 7 things out of 7 things in order for the story to progress. And
Yes.
none of the gameplay actions that you were doing were really directly related to the story that you want to unfold. So
Yeah.
it just felt like, we're adding gameplay for because it's a game and we need to have these things here. It just wasn't like, it didn't feel coherent for me.
Yeah, the creative direction clearly was more interested in the narrative than the gameplay. Many times the camera angles switched violently, causing whiplash and switching your controls almost to tank controls temporarily because you're still aiming in the right direction and moving in the wrong direction. And like little things like that, more experienced people who make games will understand that you can't do that to a player.
Yeah.
But like, we've play
You-
tested games in early builds, so we know how to,
I mean,
wrap
it's
our minds
funny
around
because
that.
the team that worked on this is Variable State, and they're in the UK. And their previous game was a game called Virginia,
Yeah. I played
Virginia?
which
Virginia.
was really interesting.
Mhm.
But similar, I think, suffered from very similar issues,
Hmm.
right?
Virginia, I feel
Um,
like they didn't really try to add gameplay to some
right,
aspects. They were like, we're gonna go full on into you're living this narrative
right.
experience, and you're taking a seat.
Which was cool, but it's funny because when you think of it, the variables. I don't know if you know of the people at Variable State. I don't know them personally,
Never
as
met
far as
them,
I
no.
know. But I remember looking into them when Virginia was coming out because they kind of came out of nowhere. And this is a team that has worked for like EA on like Battlefield and like on Connect games
Mm.
and like Grand Theft Auto, and they're very focused on storytelling, but their history isn't necessarily like the storytelling part of games.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So I just find it very interesting what they're doing. I don't know how this ended up happening or why they wanted to do that,
Hmm.
but it's interesting to watch them do it, and it's
Mhm.
interesting to see what they're making it. I haven't had too much time in Last Stop, but I've when I played it, I went like, oh yeah, this is the team that made Virginia.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well,
I
I'm
haven't
still
played enough
curious
of
about the
it.
story. Yeah.
Yeah, I played an hour of it, so it's hard to say. But like some of those, the initial impression, uh, yeah, the that's basically what I shared. Is my initial impression. Maybe the game,
Yeah.
gets more down the line.
Yeah. What else is on the buffet?
So I also played Dodgeball Academia, which which is a dodgeball RPG. I did not know it was going to be an RPG going in. I thought it was just going to be like an action dodgeball game. So this game, as soon as I started playing it, immediately knew that it was a Brazilian team that made it. The art
Hmm.
style, the character designs are very Brazil, and I
Hmm.
fell in love with it for that reason. However, I played it for about an hour and I barely played any dodgeball. It's mostly walking around the academy and talking to people, which at the time, like, your mental state when you play a game is important. I hyped myself up to play some action dodgeball, and after one dialogue after the next, I'm like, it's not what I signed up for. That's not what I was in the mood to play at the time. So I am shelving it for now. I'm going to come back when I'm looking for a more narrative experience. Because if I wanted
And,
narrative, I'd go back and finish Last Stop, right?
and then you're gonna get there, and it's immediately when the dodgeball starts, and you're like, "Wow, I
Yeah.
really wanted some narrative. Like this ain't it."
That's probably gonna happen. To be
That's
fair,
probably.
to be fair, that's about it. But seriously, an hour in, and it was mostly like walking around, and there are shops, and you could buy things. It's really an RPG, and
Right.
it felt good. Like for the little time I played it, like it's anyway. The character designs were endearing. I really liked the art style. It was extremely recognizably Brazilian in so many different ways.
Mhm.
It's a good thing, a different thing. I'm excited to go back to it.
Good.
The other game I played, and I have to give a little bit of a disclaimer. The game is Boyfriend Dungeon. My friends made this game. Some of my close friends.
Hmm.
I like them a lot. They're good people. So I'm extremely biased. I'm also in the credits as a special thanks because I did a little bit of consultation work. So that's my disclaimer. So, I have to say that. Otherwise, people are going to be like, no, that's not fair. So, it's an action RPG in a sense, but it's also a dating simulator. So you go around and you find weapons that you use to fight, but the weapons are actually people that turn into weapons, and you could date them. That's the premise. And if that's not interesting, I don't know what you're looking for in a game, because that's like intriguing more than anything else. The characters are a lot of fun. They like I played earlier builds in the past, but the finished build, to be honest, I only played it for about an hour. I liked it very much. I will continue playing it. But I'm very biased. Like, I'm going through it and I could see, when you play a game that your friends made, and I could see which part they contributed to just based on their personalities. I'm getting that level of enjoyment out of the game. Like, I can tell that my friend wrote that line, or that my friend created or participated in the creation of that character. So I'm extremely biased. I apologize, but I still believe it's a good game because a lot of people are raving about it. But I'm curious if either of you have played it or will play it, and what you think about it.
I mean, they're obviously like the team at Kit Fox is also like friends. So it's interesting because it's absolutely not my type of game.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love narrative games and I love RPGs. The dating aesthetic never really worked on me, I guess. And it's not Boyfriend Dungeon in particular. It's just it's not interesting to me. I'm also the kind of person who like tries to avoid romances in like video games. So it's just not really it's not my thing. But I will say, I mean, the conversation about it is really fun, and the premise of it is kind of like interesting in a weird way. Like it makes you kind of go like, so wait, what weapon am I?
Yes, exactly. I
what would
two-handed warhammer. That has to be.
You're a two-handed warhammer.
Yeah,
but those can't hug anything.
No, but they're the most huggable weapon. They're tall, human size. They don't have any sharp edges.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. No, you've thought about this.
I have. I have. What about you? What weapon would you be?
I don't know. What would Fauzi be?
I don't know. I don't know much about the game at all, actually. So
that's just basically the question that stands on its own.
The basic idea is that you have these weapons that you use in the dungeon, and the weapons are also like dateable humans. That's sort of like their essence or spirit or whatever. So you can kind of date your weapons.
Do they have to be melee weapons, or because I'd be a machine gun, I imagine.
Why would you be a machine gun?
Or a shotgun, or like some kind of rifle?
That's what you want to be. That's not who you think you are. What weapon is your personality?
What weapon is a Fauzi?
Yes. A pillow, mostly.
Oh God! I should have that.
Fauzi's only for pillow fights.
Yeah, no, exactly. But he's more huggable than me. I lose. He went up to me.
Fauzi's ahead of you, ahead of the game.
You beat me at my own game. Damn it!
No, you have to add me to the credits.
Yeah.
Right. So no, I can see pillow would work.
Pillow would work.
Pillow would work.
So, Rami, you have to be like a cross between a longsword and a scimitar, right?
Yeah, something like that. Probably. I actually looked up because I do some consultancy work, right? And part of that is sometimes like diversity readings, and part of that is because I know the history of the sort of like Middle Eastern region pretty well, because my dad was just completely like my mom wanted to be an archaeologist, and my dad really cares about the history of the region. So I kind of grew up around those books, so there's just a lot of knowledge that I have that is just sitting there about like what types of swords were used and what types of armor people wore in what time, in what place. And it's not very useful information in general unless somebody's making a game in those regions. So I went back and I researched, but there's not really such a thing. There's not really a broadsword like scimitar in any way, shape, or form. The way they looked at swords was also a little different, like two-handed swords and one-handed swords. It really varied throughout history what was considered like
Rami would be the Buster Sword, like from Final Fantasy VII. It's like
the
giant
sword.
The Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII, just like a giant slab of metal.
Right. It was like, we got a problem? Yep, we're going to solve it. We're going to solve it in this most straightforward way possible. Yeah, that does sound like me. I'll take it.
For a second, I thought you said bastard sword, which is the sword that's between a short sword and a long sword. It doesn't fit in between, where you could hold it both two-handed or
Mhm.
one-handed, depending on how big you are.
That's too
I'm also
specific.
I'm
Yeah.
very versatile as well, but no, I think big and unwieldy sounds pretty fair. I think a lot of people go like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like Rami."
Awesome. So now that we've established which swords we are, which weapons we are, Fauzi, what have you done this last week?
This is a very like let's go around the corner.
Yeah.
We're taking We're taking-
It's summer transitions are getting a bit rusty, but I'll take.
or
There's too much
more
pressure.
efficient.
More
More
efficient.
efficient. That's just
More
it. There's
efficient.
no like build up. We're just like, so now that we've talked about this, Fauzi,
Yeah, there's too much
Yeah.
pressure. I'm just not gonna try anymore. Forget it.
he's bringing his hammer approach to this. You know,
Sledgehammer on the chit chat.
You got it.
here we go. Okay, let's go to the pillow.
All right, so a bunch of games. I have a bunch of games and a book that I want to talk
Oh.
about.
Okay.
So, actually, one of the games I spoke about before, so I'm playing a bit more of Near Replicant. So, but I spoke about that in a previous episode. I didn't say why I was playing that game. It's because I'm one of the headliner speakers at DevCon, which is a game developers conference that happens around the same time as Gamescom.
Look at you.
In a couple of weeks.
That's
And
awesome.
they're doing this fun thing in which like it's they're doing like a developer panel, which like developers are interviewing each other. So I'll be doing an interview with the developers of Nier. So like the writer, director, and producer Yokotaro, Saki Ito, and Saito.
That's
Fun.
awesome.
Yeah. So we'll be like having a chat, like a panel kind of like thing. And I played a lot of Nier Automata, so I've been like, I need to play a bit of a Replicant, kind of to prepare for this chat.
I am sorry for whatever's going to happen, because with Yokotaro, like this is going to be some stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm also like planning not to take this too seriously,
Right.
and also see what happens. Like it's gonna be like a suhoor bites kind of like gags around.
Right.
So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm kind of.
I got to do one of those ones with the Ueda-san.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that was really fun. They're really fun, sort of like panel ideas, because you get a panel that's very much the personality of the person interviewing and the personality of the person being interviewed.
Yeah.
I think a lot of normal panels, they put somebody from the press or they put like an event organizer, and they're fun, but they're usually very kind of flat conversations, right?
Yeah.
Because people are speaking different languages.
Yeah.
They're not. You don't go into design as much with somebody from the press, because you're adjusting what you're saying to the person you're speaking to.
Yeah.
But if you have two devs on a stage talking shop, potential for that to be really fun is pretty high. So I'm really excited about that.
And in this case, we also speak literally the same language. So like
Right.
there's gonna be an interpreter, but like as they answer a question, I'll be able to prepare while that the interpreter is translating, because we can understand
That's
each
true.
other.
That's
So,
true. Do they know that yet?
I
You
think,
should absolutely not tell Yokotaro that you can speak Japanese.
I
And
don't
just
think he
drop
knows,
it on him.
but two others know. So I'm also like curious about how that's gonna pan out. So we'll see.
Right.
The other game I played, I also played.
Wait, just for people who want to follow this, where can they follow this if they want to watch this? Is there, because like I know DEFCON, but like,
yeah, it should find like all the details on devcom.global, and I'll post
Right.
links on the announcements on my Twitter as well. So
right. We'll see if we can put that in the show notes too.
Yeah,
that'll be
absolutely.
cool. The other thing is I played the Switch game as well. I played Pokemon Unite.
Oh,
Okay,
that's a
okay.
MOBA,
I
right?
would love an opinion on that
So
one.
people probably have a lot of questions on this. So like, there's a bunch of things that are interesting. So I'll talk about the developer before I talk about the game, because the developer is also very interesting for me. This game is developed by Timi Studios. That's
Okay.
TIMI. This is a studio in Shenzhen, China.
Okay.
Mostly, and it's part of Tencent Games, and it's the games that they've made before are like Legend of the Dragon Mobile, PUBG, Army Attack, Call of Duty Mobile, and
Oh my God.
Pokemon Unite.
They are all over
Right.
the place.
Exactly, like the types of games that they make is like a mix of everything, and they're a very strong mobile studio.
Hmm.
Um, so this game is a free to play game on the Switch as well as iOS and Android. It's a MOBA with Pokemon characters and a bit of basketball.
Hmm.
What?
Yeah, I didn't see that
So
part.
like in MOBAs, they all have the map with the multiple lanes, and like there's two people on the lanes, and there's neutral creatures on the map that you need to kill to collect XP and gold, so that you can power up your character, so you can have more abilities, so you can destroy enemy towers.
Hmm.
That's in like MOBAs like League
Mhm.
of Legends or Dota and whatnot. In Pokemon Unite, they're not towers; they're like basketball hoops. and
Okay.
and when you kill neutrals, you're collecting balls. And then as you collect enough balls, once you reach the enemy tower, you'll be able to dunk those balls on that hoop. And basically,
What?
the team that dunks the most balls win.
Wow.
I have no idea what I just listened to.
Yeah, because I didn't know about. I saw screenshots and I didn't even get the basketball at all. I didn't see it.
I'm just sitting here and I'm like, okay, so there's Pokemon,
Yeah.
There's
there's
Pokemon.
balls,
Yeah, you
there's
collect balls when you kill the
hoops.
neutrals. There's hoops instead of towers, and then you dunk on those
Your
hoops.
your Pokemon dunk.
Your Pokemon dunks, yes.
They dunk
Do
other
all of them
Pokemon.
have like
Like
no? They dunk balls.
yeah,
They
but
dunk
they,
balls.
like
Pokeballs.
Pokeballs,
Do
right?
they dunk Pokeballs?
They're not exactly. They're a type of Pokeballs. Let me remember what they're called. They're a specific type.
Okay. But they're
Right,
Pokeballs
because
that
what-
do not house other Pokemon.
Right,
Yeah,
that would really
exactly.
messed up. And also, what happens if a Pokemon touches
That's called the
a
Unite
static
Ball.
Pokeball?
That's what it is. It's called
The Unite Ball.
A Unite
That
Ball.
sounds horrifying. What happens if you're a Pokemon and you touch a normal Pokeball just laying around? Do you think a Pokeball needs momentum to catch Pokemon?
I haven't seen any Pokeballs that have been thrown at other Pokemons as far as what I played of the game so far.
Right.
So this is not about catching them all in that sense. It's about beating other Pokemons and dunking
Right.
on them as you would. It's 5-on-5 like any MOBA would be. There's in the same way that any MOBA would have. There's creeps that walk on the lane. Creeps is the Dota term, but like neutral characters.
Mhm.
There's tall grass, and when you go into the tall grass, you're invisible, sort of like League as well.
Mhm.
But unlike MOBAs, the towers in MOBAs, they damage you when you come close to them.
Yeah.
In this game, the towers heal you. Your towers heal you.
Oh.
So you want to
Okay.
be around your tower to heal as much as possible. That's why when they want to attack your tower, or attack you while you're under your tower, you'll be constantly regenerating. So it's not a good idea for them to do that.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, it's funny because they're inverting it, but they're not really changing the balance much.
No.
Not that much, no.
It's a very
Right.
Nintendo change.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like it's the same thing, but we do it the opposite way, but it does the same thing really. Like nothing
Exactly.
changed. You just
Yeah.
play it the way you always play it. Just
There's still the same stuff. Like there's still like
Right.
lane movement. There's still ganking. There's still like
Is there jungling or
different roles. There's jungling.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, there's like an equivalent of a Roshan. I forgot what it's called, but
With
like
the
a
dragon,
giant
yeah.
neutral Pokemon appears, and you can go and defeat them
just
to get
wreck
stuff.
that Snorlax.
Yeah.
Snorlax is a playable character. I'm a Snorlax main. No surprise there.
I would love to see a Snorlax dunk.
I think I would be a Snorlax main too.
A Snorlax, as expected, is a tank.
Of course.
Snorlax is easy to play. It's like an easy to learn character. That's why I'm a Snorlax. Does stuns and area of effect damage and stuff like that.
I'm still traumatized by the original Snorlax from Pokemon. I got stuck at that part of the game because I didn't understand you need the flute, and I had to quit my Pokemon run and like get rid of my beloved Squirtle.
No.
So I will fight the Snorlax. I will download this game to wreck some Snorlax.
The thing I like about this game a lot as well is that unlike other MOBA games, which can last between 45 minutes to 50 minutes, even like the shorter MOBAs got it to like 35 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
This game is 10 minutes, and because it's
Oh.
timed.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
like you have 10 minutes to dunk as many balls as you can.
That's so good. Yeah.
I just can't get over that. I'm just imagining a Snorlax trying to dunk a ball. Like I don't
Um, yeah, have some, look at some videos and like watch
Yeah.
how the dunks happen. But like it is really like a hoop, and you're grabbing a bunch of balls and then you're dunking them on some fools. So
That's super exciting. I am actually looking forward to playing it. I like MOBAs. I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan. I am a fan to a certain degree, but I like MOBAs and I like the concept, the idea of a short MOBA. Because one of the reasons I stopped playing League of Legends is it was getting ridiculous. I'd play
yeah,
like I'd have 2 hours to play in a day, and that's like 2 games, maybe 3 if I got unlucky or super lucky in one of them.
yeah.
Can I just ask one more thing, Osama?
Yes.
You were posting some Call of Duty madness
Yes.
on your Twitter
Yes.
the other day.
Yes.
Like that was some. I didn't know you could like do that.
So okay, I have good games and bad games like everyone else, but Call of Duty, if as far as shooters go, my two best shooting games are Overwatch and Call of Duty now. I'm actually pretty good at both of them, but that specific run is like ridiculous. So the video I posted, I was running on a train like in one of the maps, and I saw just a flicker of somebody, one person. So I went on my belly on the top of the train so that they wouldn't see me, and I got a headshot. And as I got the headshot, I saw a little bit of movement to the side, and I moved to the side, and I got another headshot. And as I did that, I was like, "Where could the others be?" And I turned to the side, and I see another person peek out, and I get another headshot, and then another one, and then there's smoke, and I got lucky, and I shot through the smoke and got a fifth headshot. I got 5 headshots in 10 seconds. I don't think I've ever done that before.
Wow.
So I got playing the game, and I felt really good about myself.
It was a thing where it's like, okay, headshot, and then there's like a second enemy, and it's like headshot, and you're like, okay, that's reasonable,
Yes.
That's good. And then there's like the third one, it's like, oh, okay. And then the thing Osama doesn't tell you about the fourth one is like that's a millimeter shot,
Yes.
right? Like it's between things. It's not like yes, it's a headshot, but it's also like a quarter second of response time you had to actually nail that
Yes,
shot.
it was.
And then there's just like the spray and pray through the
smoke.
and it's like another hit, and you're just like, okay.
I'm like, what the hell? That was like almost the entire team because there's 6 versus 6.
Was that
I
on
guess
PC?
I wouldn't want to be on the other side of the game.
That one was on Xbox, but I do play the game also on PC. I have it on both, and it's the same account, right? And it's crossplay.
Yeah.
So I'll play on PC sometimes. I'll play on.
Because I was going to ask, are you like a better aim mouse and keyboard,
Yes.
or better aim on gamepad?
I'm better
You're better
aim
than
keyboard.
that on a mouse and keyboard.
I'm better aim mouse and keyboard for sure, but
God.
I actually prefer playing FPSs on on the couch comfortably. So that's
Nice.
that's one of the reasons I play with the controller. But like usually I'm worse with the controller, not better, right? It's really hard.
I mean, I'm terrible at mouse keyboard aim.
Yeah,
I'm really bad at it. It's not my thing. I don't know what happened because I started as a PC gamer. I was like diehard on Quake, on Unreal Tournament, on like all that stuff. Played against friends, like I cared about that stuff. And then I don't know, shooters are just better on the couch for me.
yeah, yeah.
So
I agree.
I just sit back. I mean, for me, it's Destiny, so it's barely a shooter. Even PvP Destiny is.
You're ridiculously good at Destiny. I played with you, and I'm like, I played it casually. I played it when it first came out, Destiny 2, and then I hadn't touched it since. And I'm like, I should be pretty good. No. Remy's much better than me. It's there's still muscle memory. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. There's still muscle memory that comes back a little bit, but like all the nuance of the game, when you stop playing one specific game and you play another, your habits change. Same thing happened when I played Street Fighter Alpha 3 for the first time after playing Street Fighter Third Strike. Like it feels floaty. Like the kicks, the hitboxes, everything is so different. You have to relearn it, right? Not like the basics, but just like to get good. You're like, oh no, I did that too soon, too early. That kind of thing.
Right.
So, Fozy, you had a book to talk about. I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off, Remy. Go ahead.
No, it's just there was a cat joining us today.
I'm opening the door and letting the cat out. Sorry about that.
We have a Habibi Cat.
Apologies.
No, please. Like, have the cat on board. That feels very appropriate.
The cat's gone now. The door's open.
All right.
The book. I read the book called Ask Iwata.
Oh.
Right.
You guys heard about this book?
Yes. I wanted to read it.
It's a nice collection of interviews that Iwata did, either from the Iwata Ask, a series of articles and interviews that he used to conduct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or he was friends with Shigesato Ito. Itoi is his name,
Mhm.
who is now an editor at the newspaper. And ever since like they've released the Earthbound together, Iwata used to still go past the newspaper where he works, and he would sit down and they would talk. And they collected all of this work posthumously after he passed away, and they released it in the form of the book to kind of get to know the man and the manager that Iwata used to be. It's a very small book, so it's a quick read. I read it in 2 settings almost. It's fantastic. I love the book because, like, for me, I really look up to the late Iwata. He's such a powerful figure in the industry, and like he's a man that did a lot of interesting things.
He's a visionary.
Humble,
Yeah.
a visionary, and I think I spoke about him in the podcast before. He has such a an esteemed place in the industry across the world, most definitely in Japan as well. I was in Japan when he passed away, and like you could see the impact that he had, that his passing had.
Yeah.
So it's a book that celebrates his life as well and his legacy.
Right.
Well, I'm
But the
adding it
most
to my list,
interesting
like.
thing for me is that like it was cool for me to read a bit about his managerial style. Like,
Oh.
what was Iwata like as a manager? As a manager in the industry myself, you know, I'm always trying to become a better manager, read a lot of books about the topic and something like this. So, like, to read up more about the management style of somebody I really look up to has been very insightful. So, definitely recommend the book. Worth checking out for sure.
It sounds like a wonderful book.
Mm.
I think it's really interesting to learn about how other people do things, right?
Mhm.
And I think Iwata's kind of an odd one because the skill of it is huge,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Like I don't think necessarily a lot of what Iwata learned throughout his life will apply to many game developers, but it's interesting to see the way of thinking
Yep.
Mhm.
and sort of like the decision making process.
That's something like, you know, gives me a bit of validation. So like Iwata speaks in this book about like how he scheduled meet when he like became the president of HAL Laboratory. He wanted to meet with everybody. So he scheduled like meetings with every person in his team to kind of have a chat. And that gave me a bit of validation because like, for example, in my most recent job, as I joined the studio, I'm managing 85-ish designers. And I wanted to meet every single designer on my team. And I
Right.
like, you know, made sure that I scheduled meetings so I can meet all of them. And like we sit down and we have a chat and something of the sort. And that was super informative for me. I had so much information and insight and like assisted me so much in the job. To read that he also applied the similar thing and that helped him. And he had
Right.
similar kind of
That's
learnings from it.
incredible.
Was super cool and validating, you know?
Yeah. That's incredible. On the topic of books, I just want to have a small little aside. You mentioned last week that a book called Jerusalem, written by a graphic novel written by a person you called Guy Del Leslie. I think you pronounced it something like that.
I butchered his name and I admitted to doing so on the podcast.
You did, and that's totally
it's
fair.
on record. I apologize even while I'm doing it.
Yes. What's interesting is that I heard you say that and it didn't ring a bell. And then when I was doing the show notes and I looked it up and I read the name myself, it's Guy Delisle. And I had read that book. So
close enough.
Yes, it was a great book. It was actually his second book I read from him. The first book I read from him was called Pyongyang. He spent time in North Korea with his family, and that was really interesting. Sorry, it wasn't with his family; it was alone. The Jerusalem is when he spent time with his family in Palestine and the West Bank and other parts of Israel. Both books are great. I love the author, but yeah, I'm sad that I didn't click on that because I would have jumped in and joined on the conversation. It was a great book. Yeah, so Rami,
You didn't know Guy the Silent?
it's it's Guy
Famous-
Delisle. Say it with me, Fauzi. Guy Delisle.
Guy Delisle.
You got it.
Perfect. It's French, so you just kind of drop all the S's and kind of like mumble your
Way
And
more
pretty
letters
much-
that I pronounced.
This is too many. And you're in Sweden. You don't pronounce 90% of the letters either.
Pretty much.
That's fair, but that also
That's
gets
fair.
confusing over time.
Right.
Which letter should I drop in what language?
Yeah. At some point, with all the letters you have to drop in different languages, we're just not going to speak anymore.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
You're
wow,
just
jama'a
nod.
and everything.
Yeah. It's absolutely. You're just like,
Exactly.
It's like, oh yes, no, I want 2, please. It's like, what?
That's nice.
No, I think the final thing I did this week is I launched a new thing.
Another new
Oh.
thing all the time,
I
Remy.
launched a new thing. Yeah, I'm sorry, it gets out of hand. I launched a new thing. It's called a leveling the playing field, and it's a newsletter kind of situation. I've been doing
Mhm.
these consultancies for the past 9 months now.
Mhm.
And it's 4 hours a day. It's pretty intense, right? And I wanted to make the time available because it's a sabbatical year for me. I quit Vlambeer last year, and I wanted to take a year off. And I decided that I wanted to spend a significant portion of that time helping other developers because it's what I've done for 10 years, and now I had some time to focus on
It's
it.
very Remy of you.
Yeah. So I scheduled 4 hours every day except for Tuesdays. To do consultancy, and I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of developers, small indies just starting out, students that don't know what they want to do in their career, studios that are well established and are having issues with their game or their design or their production or their business or whatever it is. And I listened to them for like 15, 30, 60 minutes, and then we worked through the problem together. And alhamdulillah, so far, most cases that I've come across, I've managed to solve. But one of the things that I came across that was really interesting is that just some issues just happen over and over and over and over again. And I'm pretty booked on this consultancy, right? Like normally there's like weeks, if not months ahead of bookings, and it's hard to get time in that schedule.
Mhm.
I make more time. I move some people around, so I try to make sure that there's emergency slots always. But the thing that I notice is that a lot of my time is going to these repeat questions. And I thought, well, what if there's a better way? What if there's a better way to talk about these issues? What if there's just like a blog or a website that talks about these questions? And I realized that a blog won't necessarily work because it's all these different topics that I'm talking about, and people like blogs when they're focused,
Mhm.
right? Like you read a blog on design, you read a blog on business, you read a blog on anything, but you don't really read a blog about like just sort of like the weird stuff that happens in game development.
Yeah.
Because
The,
you can read the 4 focused ones,
Do
right?
do you have an article written or planning to write one about how to join the games industry? Because I get asked
I
this
get
question
that.
5 times a day.
Oh,
Can I
Yeah.
just copy paste that and just send it to people?
Yes.
Yep, sure. And if you have thoughts, let me know as well. So kind of the idea is it's at leveling the playing field is at ltpf.ramiismail.com. I still have to like learn how to say that abbreviation.
Yes.
You can find it on my Twitter as well. And the basic idea is that every 2 weeks there will be an article about design, marketing, pitching, business, production, team management, like thinking about structure, thinking about life as a creative. All of these different topics that don't really have a common thread, except for that any developer goes through them at some point in some way, right? Um, and some of them might apply to AAA, some of them won't. They're mostly focused on independent developers, but I've learned a lot of my craft and a lot of the things that I know from talking to lots of people in the industry in lots of different places and lots of different points in their career. So I feel like a lot of the advice is sort of like not generalized, but it will apply more broadly. I'm very excited about the experiment,
That's
and I
super cool,
hope that
man.
it's gonna open up some space to do consultancies for people with not the same question. Not that I minded those,
Yeah.
but it'll be more helpful that way, right?
I'm excited about
So-
your first issue. I can't wait to read it.
And
Mhm.
like by now it's going to be out by the time people are listening to this.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out. This is a question I have a lot. Is okay. We're doing a game design and we're stuck. We're stuck. We can't figure it out. Something feels off, and we can't figure out what is off. And without fail, if I ask people, okay, so what's the core of your game? Like, what's the nugget, right? Like, what is this game? What is the truth at the heart of it? They don't have an answer.
Mhm.
So the exercise that I kind of go through in the first one was, how do you figure out what's sort of at the heart of your game? And it's something that normally you kind of want to do up front. You want to define your pillars. You want to figure out what sort of like is at the heart of it. But a lot of indies come from like a prototyping tradition where you just prototype something. You're like, oh, this is cool. Let's go. And you don't really define what you're trying to make, right? You just keep going until you hit a wall. So this one is sort of like a retroactive way of figuring out what's at the heart of my game. Like, what am I making? What contradicts that? And in my consultancies, usually when you take the contradicting things away or you make the contradictions intentional, they get unstuck and they can continue their design.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about that. It's a fun one.
It's a good one. Looking forward to it.
Awesome.
It'll be an interesting one to open with. So we'll see. Hopefully by now, I haven't lost like 4,000 subscribers or something. But it went really fast. There's thousands of subscribers now, which is really cool, and I hope it's going to help.
Inshallah khair.
Inshallah.
I think this is a good time to wrap it up and thank everybody for listening. And seriously, I'm super excited about this podcast. Every single episode, I think we're getting more into the vibe of it, and I'm really excited to see what comes out from the future. So thank you, everyone, and don't forget to write us. And salam.
Salam.
It's my turn.
No, you go first. Salam.
Oh, I go first. Oh, salam. I'm getting much better at this. We're absolute heroes.
We're
there's
getting
no way
so good at this.
We're never gonna get this wrong. It's just always gonna be good. Anyway, okay. Salam.
Salam.
That was the Habibis podcast for this week. I'm Osama Dorias, your host for this episode. You can find me on Twitter at Osama Dorias. My fellow Habibis were Rami Ismail, you can find on Twitter at @THA_Rami, and Fawzi Mesmar, who you can find on Twitter at Fawzi Mesmar. Send us your questions, stories, suggestions via info@thehabibis.com. Intro and outro music was provided by Malik Zubayla, and the logo was provided by Ibrahim Hamdi. The Habibis is a weekly podcast about 3 game developers drinking good Arab tea, with new episodes launching every Friday, inshallah. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service, or check out thehabibis.com for more information. Thank you for listening, and Assalamu alaikum.